Is it possible for time to lie? To tell you something is over, safely in the past, when really it's only waiting to run itself again? And when it does return, how does it announce itself? With drama? With force? Or perhaps with just a simple ring of a bell? You know the kind of house I mean. The kind of place with good bones and bad wiring. The kind that looks like it's been holding its breath for a century or more, waiting for someone to come and finally settle in and stir the dust. That's the one we moved into. A narrow Victorian terrace, squeezed between two others on the street, too quiet for city, but just noisy enough to be restless. The railway line wasn't far away, trains rumbling in the distance like some slow mechanical heartbeat. You don't quite feel, but you know it's there, always present. I couldn't hear them, of course. Lila, well, she fell for the place straight away. She had that thing with old houses. The way they hold secrets in the walls, the way time lingers in the chipped paint and creaky floorboards. She said the house smelled like memory and dust, like a pocket of the past preserved. Me? Well, I've tried to keep practical. How much? How far away is the off-licence? What are the neighbours like? Loud? Nosy? Loud wouldn't bother me. I've been deaf since I was 14. We hadn't exactly made friends with our neighbours at other places we'd had. Maybe it was because I didn't respond when people shouted hello, or just my demeanour generally. The day we moved in, Lila signed to me with her articulate hands. We just need to fit in this time. It was a small phrase, heavy with hope and a faint hint of desperation. I nodded silently, though I wasn't sure I wouldn't disappoint her in this, somewhere along the line. One afternoon, Lila came home with a little brass doorbell she'd found at a market. It was heavy in her hand, with an engraving of a single eye enclosed in a circle, faded but still clear if you looked closely. It felt awfully warm when you held it, like it'd been touched 1,000 times before. She said it felt right for the house, like a bridge between then and now. Well, I didn't argue. We installed the bell that evening. She said that the sound it made, soft, muted, almost like a gloved knuckle tapping gently on wood, rather than a sharp ring. Lila said she felt as if she knew the sound well. I'd heard it before somewhere, in some forgotten corner of her memory, but couldn't think how. She said it was a curious sound, almost familiar but not quite. And then, a couple of days later, the ringing started at odd times. The very next day, a visitor arrived on the front doorstep, a boy, no older than 7 or 8, dressed as if he'd stepped out for a photograph from a century ago. Trousers too short, a jacket too large, and a cap pulled low. He was polite, silent, with eyes that held something old and tired beyond his years. Without a word, he handed me a folded piece of thick paper, sealed with green wax. It was an invitation. Wycliffe House, it read in curling script. Garden party, Sunday 4 o'clock. Games later, in inverted commas, exclamation mark. Before I could ask, he was gone. Wycliffe House was a name I'd never heard before. When we looked it up, there was nothing but a car park in the place where the house was supposed to be. Perhaps once had been. A lifeless empty slab of concrete, with no history, no presence. Lila laughed it off, said it must be a joke or some elaborate prank they play on newbies. But the paper was too crisp, too strange to be that. The wax seal was cracked just enough to feel genuine. The writing felt old. It tugged at something inside us both, a mixture of curiosity and unease. Mrs. Wilkins, our next-door neighbour with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, well, she came by shortly after that. She told us she had seen and spoken to a man standing at our door yesterday. According to her, he'd worn a long coat and carried a doctor's bag, the kind you see in old black and white films. I raised my eyebrows and caught Lila signing to me the words, "Be nice." According to Mrs. Wilkins, the man had rang our doorbell for almost half an hour. She claims he had called across the hedge to him, and he replied apparently, "My visit is of the most importance. It concerns the health of their young child." Well, I felt Lila flinch at that remark. We have no child. Not anymore. Well, since that winter that nearly broke us. I immediately thought of Joe, my friend, the notorious practical joker. Was this some sort of moving in present that only he'd think of? On this occasion, an unthinkingly crass one, if that's what it was. Mrs. Wilkins went on with her description of the man. Tall, with greying hair combed back neatly. A right booming voice, actually, she said. Well, that certainly ruled out Joe, then. A red-headed, softly spoken 5'6". He stood and rang that bell of yours for half an hour, he did, repeated Mrs. Wilkins needlessly. When was this, then? I asked, eager to end the conversation. Saturday evening. An answer that made no sense to us, as we reflected upon it later. We'd been in at the time, all along, quietly watching TV, in the very front room we were now sat in, a room with a perfect view of the front path and door. Over the next weeks, more silent visitors came. A woman in a wide-brimmed hat, a man in a bowler hat, a small child clutching a ragged teddy bear. All waited with a stillness that grew heavier each time. I can't speak for Lila, as I refused to address the matter, but I had quickly become scared of that simple act of answering the door. Then one evening, I saw him, the man with the doctor's bag, standing at our doorstep, flickering in and out of existence like a shadow caught between two worlds. When he finally appeared fully, his mouth moved, but no sound emerged, as if the words were trapped behind an invisible veil. He may have been heard, but not by me, of course. But in truth, something tells me his mouth moved, but didn't move the air around it by way of sound. No breath, no sound, only the silent promise of something unheard. I tried to read his lips, a skill not unpracticed by me. There was something about a child, an illness. He stared at me with empty eyes, just slowly turned and walked away, disappearing beyond the garden wall without a trace. The unease settled deep inside me like cold water seeping into bones. I insisted we disconnect the bell. I cut the wires myself. But that night, at midnight, the bell rang again. Soft, insistent, like a glove knuckle tapping on wood. And even though my world has been of silence now for 20 years, I heard it too. How? I have no idea. No idea at all, but I heard it clearly. I dared not open the door. But that said, I had to stop Lila from doing so. She, seemingly, was drawn to it, despite the fear it had induced in us both. I lay awake in the dark, eyes clenched tight against the shadows. We spoke little of it the next day, but curiosity gnawed at me. I made my way to local library, and in the archives there I sifted through old maps and old brittle records. I was looking for what exactly? Well, I wasn't sure. But eventually, my search turned to Wycliffe House and that bizarre garden party invitation. Wycliffe, it seems, had been demolished decades ago, replaced by a bleak car park. But buried in the dust and yellowed pages were whispers of Samuel Whittle, the last owner, a man rumoured to have been involved in the occult, strange rituals, secrets now folded deep beneath the earth and the tarmac. The following night, Lila, out with friends for the evening, forgot to take her keys and rang the disconnected bell out of habit. As her fingers pressed the cold grass, she said she had felt something, a warmth, like a pulse beneath her skin, as if the bell itself had a heartbeat she could sense, but not hear. Later in the middle of that night, I sensed, as only a sleeping partner can, that she wasn't in bed anymore. I found her outside, in the chill of a November northern night, her fingers still resting lightly on the bell button, her eyes distant and unseeing, as if listening to a sound only she could hear. Then came the final night. I woke in the early hours, desperate for a glass of water, after perhaps one or too many beers earlier. I was dumbfounded to find the front door open. As I approached to close it, trying to understand how it had become unlocked and ajar, I could see to my horror that beyond it, the street had changed. Not completely, but enough to unsettle the strongest of nerves. Gas lamps flickered where electric street lights should be. Horse-drawn carriages rolled silently beside modern buses. People dressed in Edwardian clothes mingled with passers-by in modern coats and umbrellas. Time laid and folded back on itself. I walked out to the front gate in order to look more closely. I turned to look back at the house. And there, through the front window, I saw Lila drinking tea with calm, measured grace. Around her sat 3 unknown guests, all dressed in period costume, faces serene and expectant. A laugh, a relaxed voice, and in her arms now, cradled gently, was a small child, swaddled in pale linen, peacefully asleep. Lila, seeing me, smiled softly and mouthed words through the glass of the window that I will never forget. We just need to fit in.